Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OneMicNite podcast. My name is Marcos Luis. I'm the host, and I want to thank you guys all again for joining me and welcome all the new people who have subscribed on YouTube. I really appreciate you. And all the people who are leaving comments and listening to the audio podcast. We're available on all digital platforms. Follow us at OneMicNite. OneMicNite is spelled ONEMICNITE. This is a podcast for artists and entertainers and people who motivate you in life. And I hope you're enjoying this podcast, but this episode is a special OneMicNite episode. So if you're under 18, please make sure you have a little parental guidance. The subject matter today is a little more serious. So I want to thank you for this episode. My guest today goes by the name of Ben Jhamar Smith. And we're going to be talking about some issues of concern that affects our community and how we navigate our way through life. So please welcome him to OneMicNite podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are
Good.
you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for spending your time and making the time to come here and join me on this one. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So first of all, do you go by Ben, Jhamar? What would you like me to call you?
Jhamar. You can call me Jhamar.
Okay, so we'll call you Jhamar. Listen, I have questions.
Ask away.
First question is, who is Ben Jhamar Smith, but who is Jhamar Smith?
Ben Jhamar Smith is actually an educator in DC public schools.
Wow. Okay.
Currently, yes. I say someone who has survived to get to a place where I'm now living, and teaching others who are trying to survive and who have survived to live. And when I say survive, I mean extreme childhood trauma.
Childhood trauma. Okay.
Yes.
So let's go back a little bit. Where were you born? Where are you from?
So I was born in Florida in a very rural area. I actually was born in Palm Beach County, Florida, western Palm Beach County, in a small place called Pahokee. Pahokee, yes.
Pahokee. Okay, it sounds small.
It's very small. There actually are a lot of athletes, professional athletes that come from there, because there's not really a lot of technology. So the kids, when it comes to running and athletics, are very agile and athletic. So I was born in that area, but I'm actually from Martin County, which is called Indiantown.
Indiantown, okay.
Indiantown, very little small rural town where everyone knows everyone. And matter of fact, we only had one red light growing up. So
wow, that is small. That is small.
Small.
What was life like there for you?
Extreme poverty. Not just my family, but all around. The only work was agriculture work. I was primarily raised by my grandmother, because my mom, my biological mom, she experienced a lot of physical and psychological abuse from my dad, so much so until she developed schizophrenia. And so life was difficult. As a kid, I have a sister who is a year and a half. I'm the oldest of five, first of all, or firstly. And so as a kid, my sister, who's a year and a half younger than I am, we would watch my uncles because my mom would be wandering the streets out of her mind. She would go days without eating. And so we would watch my uncles go in the streets and find her, restrain her. They would drive her 5 hours away to McClenny, Florida. And there she would be placed in the state mental institution. At the time, they had state mental institutions for months at a time. And so life was hard because for me, I'm one who can remember a lot. And so a lot of the nuances of that, being the oldest of five, I remember. And so because our community was small, everyone knew everyone. So going to school was challenging because people would say, why'd your mom walk in the streets? We heard your mom is crazy, because adults say that at home and
Right.
kids hear And so it was that type of nuance.
A constant reminder of what was going on too as a child.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, people really did not have a really good grip on the science of mental illness. And so my family didn't understand it. And so it was that component, because you would hear family members refer to your mom as crazy, not meaning to, but it was what they knew. And then there was the violence that, that was involved in that, and then violence committed against you. My mom was very violent at times, and she's no longer here. She passed in 2017, but she was extremely violent, particularly when she would be in that mental state. So it was nothing to get burned with a cigarette. It was nothing to get punched. I made reference in a video that I did, punched in the head so hard that you literally felt like the inside of your head was burning and you couldn't remember the next moments. I remember one day being slapped in the eyes with a belt, and me actually telling my mom, you hit me in the eyes with the belt, and she went to hit me again. So at that time I was a little older, and I snatched the belt through it, and we were going to fight, but she backed off and I ended up leaving. But it was that type of trauma. And then, watching my mom be in relationships. I made mention in the video, at one point, my mom was dating a guy, and she was pregnant for him with one of my brothers. And we had gone to his house that morning from my grandmother's house. And I was sitting in the car waiting on her to come out. And something said to me, get out and go in now. And when I got out to walk up to the trailer where they were, he had a machete in his hand, and he was crying and bursting glasses in the floor, drinking glasses in the floor. And my mom, who was pregnant at the time, looked, horrified. And so in my little 6-year-old mind, I'm thinking, I can't let this man hurt my mom.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So I'm trying to fight this man, and eventually he ended up catching me after a, game of, chase, basically trying to get me. And then so I'm jumping in between this man saying, you're not going to do anything to my mom, and I'm 6 years old. So all of that time of trying to protect, them, my mom, and then my siblings, trying to look out for them. Nobody other than my grandmother, who did her best, nobody was really looking out for me.
Right.
Yeah.
This is interesting because a lot of people of color go through this similar situation, the same situation. It's not an uncommon story. We hear about a lot of times the kids trying to protect their mother, the mother who is, whether it's drugs or not, just in some sort of oppression, where she's in a relationship that's abusive, and then it in turn, goes to the child. You're abusive to the child in some way, or the person that she's involved with, who may not be your biological father, abuses the child.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's a cycle. It's definitely a cycle. Which stems from, as we can sort of say, probably economic depression of people of color, and being in a small town, being from a small town, and not being able to find a way out, and not knowing that there is another way out. So you turn to things like alcohol, you turn to things like drugs to alleviate the pressure and the pain, and, be someplace else.
Right. Those maladaptive behaviors that we do just trying to survive. I think that's one of the things that I realized later on after going through therapy. I know we're not there yet, but we developed this external shell to try to protect the inward person that really is that, I wouldn't say soft, but I discovered that I didn't even really know who I was, because I had put on such an external shell,
right?
Just trying to protect myself, that I was protecting myself from knowing who I was.
Right. It's your coping mechanism.
Yeah,
coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
So that you could just make it to the next day, or make it beyond the next day. And
Absolutely.
we do that as kids, we do that as adults, we do that as people when some sort of abuse is going on. Yeah. So back to, so the relationship between your mother and her current partner, was that an abusive relationship for you as well? Was he abusive towards you or the kids or?
Well, I will say this about my mom. From what I hear with her and my father, he was abusive towards her. But I will say that when we came along in relationships, she never allowed any of that to take place. Not that I saw. So when that incident occurred with him, she left him alone, and then she just moved on. Now my brother came later on, so she still has a child by him, but she left him alone. Later on in life, she did end up remarrying, where that husband was abusive, but by that time I was an adult, but I still had younger siblings who experienced that.
Did you feel like the protector then? Did you feel like you had to intervene sometimes and protect your younger siblings?
At the time I was in grad school, and I did not find out about it till later. If I had known about it, I may not have been sitting here.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
If I had known about it. But yeah, it definitely, my younger siblings, it definitely impacted them as well.
So you went to grad school. How did you feel? How did you get out of that situation? Because a lot of times coming from small cities, we don't have a scope of the world. We don't have a scope of what we can possibly do to make our lives better. What gave you the courage? What gave you the eyes to do something like that?
So firstly, neither of my parents had finished high school, and my grandmother grew up during Jim Crow, so she didn't have access to high school.
Absolutely, very common story. Yeah.
Right. So, but my grandmother was really our anchor and saving grace, and she pushed school. She would often tell us, "Listen, I didn't have access to an 8th grade education beyond the eighth grade education. So when you go to school, I understand things are going on at home, but you better sit and learn. You can be in a place, but not be of a place." And she would always say that. And so that was our foundation. Prayer was our foundation. And so when I got in high school, I was kind of moseying along. I was going to school, wasn't taking it seriously. I think my GPA at one point was a 1.5. I wasn't doing anything, but I would literally skip classes 2 and 3 weeks at a time. And my grandmother worked so much, she didn't get phone calls because I would intercept them all and then hang up the phone.
Right.
So but I could always sing. Growing up, my pastor's wife was a music minor, and so she sang opera, and so she heard me sing, and they would make all the kids sing, and she heard me singing, and then from the time I was 5, she started making me lead songs in church, and so when I got to high school, I was a part of this singing group, and we had performed and did a live televised gong show, and we actually won over the music teachers group. So the next day he came and found me, and this is my junior year in high school. And he asked me to come by and see him, and I did. And he said, has anyone ever talked to you about singing in an organized group where you learn the discipline of music theory, the whole discipline of music? And I said, no. He said, you have the type of voice that you can actually go to college off of a full scholarship. And he asked me to come and audition for his special. They had a special group called the Showcase Ambassador Show Choirs. And he asked me to audition. And out of about, I guess, 30 something students, I was one of 5 to get in. And he became very ill the next year. His name is Ron Eugene Staley. Shout out to his wife if she ever sees this. But he became very ill the next year and could not complete the next year, but what he said to me resonated. And so I pulled my GPA up high enough to finish high school, enlisted in the military. I graduated June 9th, June 23rd, I was in boot camp. And while I was in the military, I started thinking about putting my life together. And after I did 2 years, I got out. They started the AmeriCorps program under Bill Clinton. I did that, and when I did that, I also started college. Didn't have any support, but I walked on the college campus and told them I wanted to major in music. They sent me to the music department, and I sang a song that I was taught in high school from Professor Ron Staley. And the lady looked at me and she said, you have a full vocal scholarship. She said, you have one of the purest voices I've ever heard. And
Wow.
and I ended up singing classical music, and I had never sang classical music before in my life.
See, I love that. See, here's the thing. Here's three things right here. God, the arts, and the military saved your life.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How integral of a part was religion throughout your life? So were you going through church throughout?
Woo, yes. Yeah. My grandmother, not just going to church, but my grandmother really believed in being a light in her community. She's very well respected. She not only raised her 8 kids, but also several grandkids, great grands, and people in the community. And she did field work. So she would get up 5 o'clock in the morning, go to work 6 o'clock, and work till 6, 7 o'clock at night in the hot Florida sun doing horticulture and field work. But she would come home, and even when my mom would be ill with the mental illness, that lady would moan in prayer and travail in prayer and rock back and forth for 2 and 3 hours. And it just got all in your soul. And so I learned early on that God can do anything. He can bring you out of anything, and that he's a very present help in the time of trouble. And so I learned from my grandmother at an early age that if I call him, he will answer, and he will show me mighty things that I've never seen. Amen. So that was my anchor. My grandmother taught us prayer, and she exemplified prayer in a life, that you can look at and be like, okay, I understand God because I see him at work. And so she would pray. And even with my mom, when my mom first went in a state mental institution, they said it was one of the most severe cases they had ever seen, and that they didn't think she would ever come out. And I heard my grandmother for about 2 weeks straight just hold to God and pray and travail and moan and cry out. And one night she just stopped and she went to bed. And about 2 weeks later, my mom came home.
Wow. See, that's amazing.
And years later, I asked her, I said, I remember that. I said, why did you stop praying like that? She said, because he answered and he told me she was all right and she was coming home. She said, I got the answer. She said, and I was confident in the answer.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Wow.
So yeah, that's that. She just.
Let's shout out to the grandmothers out there who hold the house down for everybody. The matriarchs of the house who pull up to the bumper when they need to pull that family together.
Yeah. Right? So when I got ready to attend college, I said, Mama, I want to attend college. She said, baby, I ain't got no money. She said, but I got prayer. She said, and God's gonna give you favor. And he did. I was scholarship. That's right. All the way through my master's. That's right. Yeah, and he did.
He did.
So that's my foundation, prayer and the word of God. People believe what they believe, but I know what works.
Right.
I know what works, not because I read it, but because when I apply it, I see the manifestation of it. And so
absolutely,
I'm appreciative of God every day. Yeah.
And also, we have to do a little bit of the work too. We can't just sit back and wait. We got to do the work too. We have to do the work too. So you have the gift, you know what I mean? And you have to have the faith that it's going to work for you and be ready and be ready.
Yes. I actually had to explain that to someone who thought they were denying me a job. I said, I think you all have it confused. You think that you open doors, but that's not how it works. God opens the door and I'm prepared to walk in it. And he opens the door because it's his will for me to walk in there.
There you go.
Don't create opportunities.
Don't create it.
Appreciate it though.
That's right. How did you get past, you have years of childhood trauma, maybe some verbal abuse, whatever goes along with that. How do you get past that? A lot of people go through it. I want to read a couple little statistics here. 80% of sexual assaults or by acquaintances. 95% of child victims know their attackers. 40% of the males are left with psychological scarring. How do you get past all that stuff? That's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
That's a lot.
And I'm not even, I just scratched the surface of the things that I've seen and been through. I didn't even go in depth. For me,
share what you want. I mean,
life was moving so quickly. And I think it's like this for a lot of people who are experiencing trauma. One of the defining moments for me was when I was in high school and I had an experience at home. And I went to school, and the school nurse was like, and that's the thing about it. When your heart is for God, He will always put people in your path to give you a way out and to guide you in the right direction. Yes. And there was this lady named Belinda Miller, and she was like the mother of the show choir of the group that I was telling you about that I was in high school. And so at one morning, I had something that happened at home, and I went to school and I walked in her in the clinic because she was the school nurse. I walked in the clinic and I looked at her and I just started crying. And then she said, "What's the matter?" And I just went and got behind one of the curtains and I just lie down and I just cried. And at one point she got so concerned she was gonna call Child Protective Services, but I told her not to. And I cried from the time I got to school until about maybe 1:55, 2 o'clock, until it was time to go home. But when I got up from crying, I said to myself, I'm going to make something out of myself without my parents. And that was the defining moment for me. And for then I just started working. And I was moving so quickly until the trauma wasn't a factor at the time.
Right. Yeah.
The trauma really did not hit my life until later on, when things began to slow down and I began to notice certain behaviors and began to notice that I couldn't keep relationships and I was anxious a lot. And the trauma impacted me so badly that it was almost, particularly after my grandmother passed, because it triggered abandonment in me.
Yes.
I felt like I had been abandoned all over again. And even though death is natural, I knew she had to go. You know, she was 84 years old, did all of this stuff. And I wanted her to rest, but I felt like a kid who had been abandoned all over again.
Yeah.
And I felt like out of all the things that I had experienced in life, this was the thing that gave my brain a flat tire that said, we can take no more. You have no more compartments to compartmentalize the trauma that you should have been getting dealt with, but you've just been compartmentalizing it. It's been showing up in everything that you do, but you have no clue because you've accepted this as who you are. Right. If that makes sense.
And learn how to deal with it rather than to fix the problem. Because when your grandmother passed, that was, like you said, that was your kinship. That was your rock. That was the person who was in your corner, who was the rock all the time. So when that person passed, you felt abandoned, of course.
Right. And so I had a doctor's visit soon after that. And my doctor said, "Are you okay?" And I looked at her and I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "I'm crying all night." And I told, because she knew of my relationship with my grandmother, and she said, "Oh my God." And she said, "How long has this been going on?" And I told her, and she said, "That's abnormal." And so she assigned me to a therapist at the VA, Dr. Johnson. Shout out Dr. Johnson. Man, that young dude, I was like, at first when I walked in, I was like, what this young dude's going?
He don't know what he's doing.
Listen, he made me put in that work. And I began to peel back the layers of who I thought I was and what I thought I was.
Talk about it. Yeah.
And conforming and being this way for this set of people and that way for that set of people. And then, just a walking ball of dysfunctional looking functional confusion.
Yeah.
And as I began to peel away all of those things, I discovered that a lot of the things that I thought I was, a lot of the ways that I had that I thought defined me, they did not. That was trauma. You know, that was trauma speaking, showing up in my life, trying to protect this little boy.
Right.
You know, and so it forced me to open up the gates and let that little boy out. And for the first time in my life, out of all of my accomplishments, I said, I feel like a grown man.
You just said it. I just took the words out of my mouth, because what happens is that you were stuck in time as a little boy.
Absolutely.
And that's how you were dealing with it. That's why you were not functioning in relationships and dealing with people, because you get stuck in time.
Can't trust.
You cannot trust.
At bay. It's just a lot. And so now I spend my life and my time. I work with young people. I love working with young people. I particularly love working with that segment of the population, because many of them don't have the support system. My grandmother was a great support system. That lady would work sometimes from Sunday to Sunday just to make sure that we could play extracurricular activities.
Yes.
And that's the kind of work that you don't volunteering
right.
go do. But a lot of kids don't have that support system. And so, you know, that involves me, you know, speaking to parents and say, hey, do they need some school clothes? I'll buy them.
Right.
If that involves me, I have, and I'm not saying this to be braggadocious, but I have I call him my son, my godson, in Atlanta, in the metro Atlanta area. Shout out to Devontae. I ended up mentoring him when he was in middle school, and some things happened with the family, and I actually took him into foster care, and I raised him. And that happened from school, that I raised him, and he's a functional grown man, 29 years old, with a family, owns his own business in the metro Atlanta area. Right. But those are the types of things that when God allows you to come through situations, is not for you. Right. And so as scarred as I was, and still am in places, as broken as I was, and still am in places, that wasn't for me. Yes. That was for somebody else. That was for somebody. And God has restored my life to a place where I show up at work and say, hey, I'm full of light and I'm full of life.
Right.
Who needs something?
That's right. Exactly. And here's the other thing too, is no matter how you know functional we think we are, we're still all a work in progress.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we're all working to be better. We're all working to be complete. We're all working to be the best that we can be. And it's our job, like you did, and my hat goes off to you for that, is if you see somebody in need and you're able to help, give the service. Yes. And I don't mean it like a service, but I mean like give the love, help mentor that person, lead them in the direction, give them a leg up. You know what I mean? That's teach them what you know.
Right. Those are the kind of, I have my mentor, and I call him my father. I tell him all the time, if God had allowed me to pick through every father in the history of time and allowed me to pick one, it would have been you. His name is Curtis Ram. Shout out to Mr. Ram. He's actually a very renowned opera singer. Sang at the Met, La Scala. That's the person that really helped me start finding my voice. I didn't even know I had this much voice, and he helped me to find these 5 octaves that I have.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible.
I moved from bass low C to soprano high C. He helped me to find all of that. Shout out to him. But anyway, he when I was in college, when my grandmother said, God's going to give you favor, that man had never seen us before, and it was myself and 2 other of my peers at the time. He treated us like we were his kids. And when I got ready to go to grad school, he made sure I got to auditions, and he knew people and pulled strings. But that man, many days, he did not know that I didn't even have food to eat. And he would just say, what are you doing for lunch? And I would be like, I don't know. Come on, you eat lunch with me. And he would turn right around and say, what are y'all doing for dinner? Y'all going to dinner with me? If we lived and dined in Piccadilly.
Wow.
Daytona Beach at Bethune-Cookman University. So, and the only thing that he asked, even till this day, is that you do it to somebody else. You do that for somebody else. The same, whatever, everything that I poured into you, you pour into somebody else.
That's right.
That's all he asked. He said, I don't want anything from you. If you do that, that will be my payment. And so that's what I try to do.
Pass it on. Pass it on.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Give to others what causes you to live.
Absolutely.
Light causes me to live. Hope, faith, all of those things. It is all of those things together are strong enough to break through anything that we could ever experience. Absolutely. And that's why I'm sitting here today.
Right. Right. And that I want to also talk to you about this too. What allowed you to go to therapy? Because a lot of times we as people of color, we as men of color don't want to go to therapy. We don't believe in that. We were never taught to, our parents didn't, mental health was never an issue that, nobody, like we said in the beginning, nobody discussed it. Nobody talked about it. This person's crazy, but we never went and took steps to help ourselves.
Right.
What allowed you to be open to do that?
So I watched my mom. When I say my mom had serious mental illness, she had serious mental illness. And so it wasn't a lot of information at that time. And so I watched her take pill after pill, go to therapy, go through this. And she just never could get over the trauma she experienced. And I just made up in my mind that I wasn't going to live my life like that, because I saw the end that it brought her to. And and for me, it was breaking the cycle, because, she's not the only one in my family who suffered with mental illness. And I said, listen, I'm not going to be walking around here dysfunctional or even worried about what people are going to say, because I'm trying to help myself.
Right.
Because if you don't have mental health, you have nothing. It
so
impacts
That's
everything.
Very true. Every single thing in your life.
Everything. And so I just made up in my mind I was going to put in the work to be a better person, to find out who I am. Because right now, that I was at the time, I was like, I don't know who I am. All I know is I'm a grown man who experienced extreme trauma, who is stuck in several areas as an adolescent and as a little boy.
Right.
I need to break out of
broken individual. And how do I make myself become whole again? How do I start to fix and repair the things in my life and address some issues and concerns that I've had for years?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I just made up in my mind that no matter what, I was going to do the work to be a whole person, not just for me, but I work with kids who have been broken and who are broken. I mean, I can't even.
And I got to say another thing too, my hat goes off to people who are educators and teachers, because as we're talking about, your situation, this is what the kids are bringing in to you on a daily basis in order to get their education first. So you're dealing with all their stuff in order to teach them whatever it is that you're there to teach.
Well, the thing you just said something that's very profound, because I spend a lot of my time explaining away things to teachers, because for them, if you've never experienced trauma, you don't understand. And I remember I had one teacher to say, well, what happened to her today? And I said, no, trauma is not a one-time event. Right. It is something that happened or that is happening that is impacting the mind of a child so profoundly that their brain triggers fight or flight consistently. Humanly, we are not built or equipped to deal with that until we're 25 or 26 years old. But in the brain of a child that's been traumatized, that takes the place or takes dominance of the part of the brain that should be absorbing information to help you learn. And how does that impact you? Well, number one, you're not going to learn as much as you should learn. Right. It impacts you as far as executive functioning. I remember talking to my therapist and I said, as intelligent as I am for a long time, I thought I was slow and stupid. I did. Because I would have a hard time with short-term memory retrieval and organizing tasks. And he said, no. And I said, do I have ADHD? He said, no, those are characteristics of trauma. And also physiologically, science shows that it impacts your body physically. Those kids normally don't grow as well. They normally have a shorter lifespan. There's so much science behind it.
It's high stress. It's stress.
It's high, yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's how it manifests in your body.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yes. And so I spend my time trying to inform teachers, listen, this has nothing to do with you personally. This child is trying to deal with something that they shouldn't be dealing with, that adults can't even handle. You know, I had one student once who had both parents dead, and knew the parents, saw them on drugs, and not just one. I've had several students like that, but that's traumatic.
Right.
And you want them to come and sit and just learn algebra, not without showing them that you care first.
Right.
So I attended Bethune-Cookman University, and Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune had a motto that says we're educating the head, the hand, and the heart. And so
I know that's right.
Yeah, you can't educate the head and the hands without educating that heart. And so when you get the heart of a child, and that's why people say, you know, I could always get the most difficult children to behave, or, you know, just to come to themselves. It's because they know I care, and I have no motive or agenda other than to care, other than be a light, and other than to help you escape what people help me to escape.
Right.
And that's a bad outcome.
Oh man, that's a lot. That's why I advocate for teachers' pay increase, because you guys take on a lot. You take on a lot. Wow.
Yeah. But somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it, right? And
we could deal with them now or later.
Right.
You know, you can deal with them now and help them through what they're going through, or deal with them later when they're robbing you in the streets.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right.
That's the way I look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where are you now in terms of life and living and being?
Right now, I have several things going on. I'm a writer. I love to write. You know, it's funny because the pandemic pulled us away from church, and I had just started back attending church. And so the church that I attend now, I'm easing my way back into church. I think, and this is a whole other conversation, but sometimes your experiences with church can be just as traumatic.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah, absolutely right.
When you have abusive leadership, or
exactly
leaders who shouldn't be leaders, but who have anointed themselves leaders. Anyways, I gotten away.
We'll come back. We'll come back and have a conversation about that. I'm inviting you back for that one, because I'm in on that one.
Sir. Yeah. So I had stopped attending church for a long time, but I never stopped loving God. And so I'm a writer, and so I just penned a couple of songs that are centered around prayer and worship. And so I'm actually in the midst of producing those. Personally, as far as my employment and stuff like that is concerned, I just took a new position as a coach, an instructional / interventionist. Look at that, interventionist at the school. And so I work with kids who are having difficulties like the ones we are just talking about, and that impact them academically, socially, and emotionally. And so I work with kids like that.
And it makes sense because you relate to the experience and you know how to help. Yeah.
So I can love on them babies and say it's gonna be all right.
Exactly.
Go on and cry, get it out.
That's right. That's right.
All right. It's all right. We're still gonna learn. We're still gonna get through it. Have your moments. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm looking to get more into that work. I feel like I'm healed to a place, even with adults. I even mentor a lot of young adults. Shout out to one of my young lady that I mentor. Her name is Trudy. She's overseas playing basketball, and she's another one who's a survivor of childhood trauma. She when I first met her, she was a freshman in high school, and I was talking to a counselor, and she walked in and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Mr. Smith." She said, "You're my godfather." I said, "Oh, okay." And so she started coming by my classroom And as I began to get to know her, she began to reveal to me that she, had gone through similar her experiences, and that she was in foster care. And I explained to her I shared my experiences, and we stayed in contact. And God blessed that young lady to get a full ride to college off of a basketball scholarship. And now she's overseas playing professionally. So those are the kind of things that I do, and that I like to see young people achieve, or whatever it is. I don't care, whatever you do, make the best out of your ability. There's a scripture, because I know you got to go, but there's a scripture in the book of Proverbs. I think it's in the book of Proverbs, or either the book of Psalms. It says, a person who does not use his gifts and talents to heal himself is like a person who would take their own life. That's deep.
That's very deep.
That's heavy.
That's very deep.
And so I spend my life helping my students and young people, or anybody that I interact with who have experienced those things, that guess what? In all of that earthen, torn brokenness is a hidden treasure. And you're the only one carrying it.
That's right.
And if you can ever allow God to penetrate all of that hardness, you'll find that you have something in you that could take you a long ways. I performed opera, Mozart, Puccini, Verdi. I think I grew up singing in church where we didn't even have a classically trained pianist.
Wow.
Who would know?
Who would know? Yeah.
So, those are the types of things that I aspire to do. Be a light and be life. That's it. Water to the thirsty, food for the hungry, all things to all people, that some might find their way.
I like that. I like it. And listen, you just said everything. And, it's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. And yes, you are the light. So I appreciate you for that.
All glory to God, man.
That's right. So please tell everybody how we can get in touch with you, how we can reach you, how we can follow you on social media.
You can pull me up on Facebook, Ben Jhamar Smith. It's funny because I hit up one of my old teachers, and she was like, "Ooh." But then when she saw my work, she was like, "Okay, so don't let the edginess fool you, because I do have, my shirt off, but it's for a reason." So on Facebook, Ben Jhamar Smith, and on Instagram, Jhamar823, and the other one I just made, I can't think of it right now, but it's Gemini twins, U, the letter U, lowercase, love, LUV, to hate.
Okay.
So those are my contacts.
Those are the contacts. So make sure you follow him, everybody. Please, please, please go there, check out some of his work, and get some of that light. I want to thank you for being a guest here on OneMicNite podcast and sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that you're going to inspire some people along the way. And I want to invite you to come back. We're going to talk about what we mentioned before, because that's a whole.
Listen, that was part of my. Seriously, that was part of my trouble. When I'm telling you, I almost. Man,
that's a whole situation.
Yeah, that's a whole situation.
And we'll talk about
in the name of Jesus. It was in his name too, man.
All right, you guys, I got to get out of here. Please follow us at OneMicNite. OneMicNite is spelled ONEMICNITE. Make sure you go to the YouTube, watch the video, rate us, subscribe, follow, leave a comment. You can also listen to this on all the digital platforms of podcasts. We're on Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor. If you want to support this podcast, please go to anchor.fm/OneMicNite, and you can show us some love there. OneMicNite's been around for 15 years. Support me supporting artists. That's how we do here. You can also follow me at Marcos Luis on all social media. Go to the .com, find out what I do, MARCOSLUIS. And I want to thank you for joining me on OneMicNite podcast. See you next time.